So let's take a look at Pamela in action as we begin.
First of its kind program to get more kids into college.
From the moment they're born, you're thinking, how do I get this kid into a good school? How do I get this kid to, right? Am I wrong?
So here with me this morning is Pamela Donnelly, an author and college admissions specialist.
GATE is the first holistic approach to this process that anyone has come up with. It's an acronym. It stands for grades, applications, testing, and essays. So what I say is the parents hold the 4 keys and the kids go through the GATE.
Because in this age of educational technology, this stuff can live online, so we created GATE to be something that's on kids' cell phone. Because you know, my kids, oh my gosh, cell phone. It's all, girl, it's all on the cell phone.
Right.
So iPads, desktops, and laptops. So it's really very accessible now.
It's going to be amazing watching this program in the next few years.
And we're back. Hi, everybody. This is Pamela Donnelly, and I'm delighted that you're here with us. And I do want to just take a quick second to say welcome, Jeff Morrow. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm great, Pamela. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to spend some time talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I think you and I spend most of our careers, and in fact, I think between the two of us, we've got over 40 years of combined experience. So, yeah, let's share some of that insight to help these families. I know that the moms and dads out there and the teenagers, they lean in with such expectancy. They know there is this sort of maze ahead of them, and they're trying to figure out how to get through it. And they know it's basically a competition, isn't it? I mean, these kids are competing for a spot at the table with you know, universities becoming much more competitive. In fact, right now we've got about, in the last 15 years, 108% increase in college applicants at the same time that we have a 15% decrease in admissions to the same schools that might have admitted that student with those test scores, with that GPA, even several years ago. So it has become more and more competitive. And so it's a time for strategy, isn't it? It's a time for parents to equip themselves and their kids with what they need to know. So we're going to start in this webinar. We're going to cover basically financial aid angles that are going to help parents, some tips, some actionable items. So if you're, you know, sitting there and you don't have a pen and paper in front of you, you might want to go grab it, because we're going to give you some information here that is going to be really critical to fulfilling your mission to launch your students successfully. I know that there's a lot of confusion out there, so we're here to provide clarity, and it's certainly an exciting thing to be able to demystify something that I know for most people is pretty confusing. So yeah, let's get started. You know, Jeff, you and I were talking earlier about the fact that most of our students that we meet with do know that there's this thing called a FAFSA, but what they don't know is that the need-based aid is only one of 3 buckets of money, types of money that they can get for college. So let's begin with this first most familiar one. And why don't you speak a little bit to the FAFSA and what families need to know?
Yeah, thanks, Pamela. You know, the FAFSA is funny because I think, like you said, most people will have heard the term before, whether or not they understand what the acronym means, and it's the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And what it is that it's the gateway, is what it is that it's the gateway to need-based financial aid. So any of the other types of aid that you see listed here, the Pell Grant, the Stafford loan, the direct loan, the PLUS loans, are all gateways, or all aid that you can get by using the FAFSA. And generally, you cannot have access to any of that need-based aid unless you fill out the FAFSA. And we've seen a real shift in the last couple of years in terms of when the FAFSA is due. Historically, you would get that, you could fill out your FAFSA, an online application, on November the 1st to be turned in or filed on January 1st. That's different now. And before, when you'd be using your last year's tax returns. Now, it's funny, Pamela, I don't know if you're like me, on January 1st of 2017, you did not have your 2016 tax returns.
No, I did not.
I confess I did not have that done. So
yeah.
The shift in making the federal application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, due earlier in February, or in October now, in October, is really in an effort to serve students and their families. So you're able to turn in that FAFSA in October now, and you use the prior year. So for instance, if you're a student applying for financial aid in October of 2016, you would use your tax return information from 2014, the prior year. And so it really has kind of changed how colleges are awarding money and how they're looking at need, and changed a little bit of the access to these other kinds of need-based aid for the better, we're hoping. This is a brand new program, but for the better.
Yeah, and you know what I want to point out here as well is that the FAFSA, the way that these funds are often given is on a first come, first served basis. So the early bird gets that worm, and, you know, you snooze, you lose. Please, parents, make sure that, you know, October 1 is when you want to. So if you've got a rising senior, a rising junior, a rising sophomore, you want to begin just having that on your awareness. So, oh, wow, October 1, this is when that FAFSA needs to be dealt with, because that is how they're going to determine your aid. And I will point out as well, there's a difference between a grant and a loan. A grant is something that does not have to be paid back. A loan is money you have to pay back. And I'm sure a lot of you saw in the news last year, we have reached $1 trillion in student debt in this crazy country of ours. And we love America so much, but I have to say, I think it's unfortunate that so many families lack the information that we're giving in this webinar, that certainly Gate College System was founded to be able to provide, so that you don't get confused about where the money is that you will not have to pay back and how to do that. So we're going to talk about that in pretty great detail here. The FAFSA you must fill out, absolutely everybody. And here we go. There is a formula that you need to know, and I'm going to give you some lingo today. So you're going to just jot down this little equation. So COA minus EFC equals need. What does that mean? Well, the cost of attendance, you've got to remember when your student is going off to college, it is not just the tuition, nor is it just the sticker price. So we're going to talk later in this webinar about the sticker price of college and how to get that price lower. To be able to know the housing, the fees in advance, really the full cost, and also to factor in if your student is across the country or a couple of plane rides away, even that cost of them being able to travel home for holidays and special occasions. All of this impacts your pocketbook. So you have to be thinking about the full cost of attendance. Don't get sidelined in only looking at what they say the tuition is. Then the EFC is your estimated family contribution. Now that means that the federal government has decided, hey, you need to give us this much money if you're going to go to college, and then we may determine that you have a need, right? And there's this idea of gapping, right? What is the gap between what you can afford and what actually has to be paid? Different universities, some are very, I think of them as green light schools. They have a lot of green and they're very generous. Others are not so generous. That information is access that you need to have, and really experts are the ones who can guide you in determining where are the colleges that are the most generous with that need. To know that you have what is needed, take a look at these action items. So first of all, you do want to find out, hey, what percentage of need does your school cover? I do want to recommend that students are the ones asking this. It's always easy for moms and dads to kind of barrel ahead. And, there's we see it in the news a lot. I know New York Times did an article on helicopter parents, and people talk about tiger moms, and we give all these names. And, I'm a mom of 3. I've got 1 out of college, 2 in high school. And Jeff, I know you're a parent as well. None of us feel like we are helicopters or wild, ferocious animals, but we do care about our kids. But now is a time, and this is just something, I really give as a, little tip from my heart to the parents out there. We're trying to launch our kids to independence, not codependence. This is a time for your student to advocate for themselves. So communicating this with your student, honey, this is what we need to know. Why don't you take the lead in this? What percentage of need does that university that you want to target cover? Let's find that out together. That adjusted gross income is also, this is where some people get confused, and they may think that there could be an ethical conflict here. It's like, oh, we're going to change the numbers, we're going to modify. Jeff, I know we were talking about that earlier. We were talking about the fact that really there are ethical, strategic ways to get an advantage here, aren't there?
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's not about moving money around or being misleading. It's the same way that when you strategize for filling out your taxes, that you want to make sure that that you are maximizing the tax that you owe versus what you're receiving. And I think applying for financial aid is the same way. And understanding things like gapping is so critical, because I think that while what we're doing, the first part of this webinar, is very pragmatic about being strategic and planning, there's also a philosophical portion of this too, is that understanding what the gap is and understanding exactly what you're going to be responsible for covering helps you start to evaluate the value of each place and understanding not only what you can afford, but what you should afford. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit later as well, but I think it's really critical to look at this strategically so that you can be an informed consumer of your education, the same way that you research anything else that you would buy. And the idea that so many students are financing so much of their education these days, and especially when we've got laws in this country where your student debt is the only debt that can't even be taken care of by bankruptcy.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
It is an epidemic. And so the idea is that the idea is not to just blindly accept that you should pay whatever education costs, but to evaluate it, step back and say, what am I getting? What is there to gain? What is the value of this? And knowing that asking those questions doesn't mean that you think education is any less important than you once did. It still is incredibly important, but you want to make sure that you're not mortgaging your future, because if you mortgage your future, you will not be in a position to make the kind of contribution to your community that you'd like to make, the reason you're getting an education in the first place.
Oh, it's beautifully said. I always remind our students that college is not about what you get. It's about what you're here to give.
Exactly.
And I love the idea that, as they determine whether it's what they're going to major in, where they're going to go, what career path they're going to choose. And a lot of them, as we know, they're undecided as they go in. They're determining, a lot of them vast majority change majors as they get in, because of course they're still figuring it out. They're 18, 19 years old. But at the end of the day, who they are in this world and what they're here to give to this world really can be so intrinsically connected to having the right fit college. And really, we're not just here about elite schools, although we love all kinds of schools.
Sure.
The reality is the right fit school is what's going to launch your son or daughter to the best possible future. So yeah, let's talk a little bit now about our second category of financial aid. And here's where there's a lot of confusion, I think. Institutional aid is something that is generally connected to private schools. And these private schools very often are going to require you not only to fill out that little FAFSA, which is a pretty, I won't say it's painless, but it's pretty quick process. The CSS profile, over 30 pages of very deep, in-depth, required reporting of your entire financial background, moms and dads. You have that to look forward to. So to understand that, the institutional aid that is going to come to your student is going to be directly connected to them looking to incentivize a demographic that can help basically endowments at their schools to make sure that these are kids who are going to be able to help them, not just survive, but to thrive as businesses. Remember that these are a business, right? These colleges, the idea that there should be a free college education, gosh, I loved when I heard that in the political speeches. But the truth is teachers get paid and books cost money and every digital solution costs money. Money is a thing. So we want to make sure that you have access to as much institutional aid as possible. Jeff, you want to share a few thoughts on these action items and how families can strategize around that CSS?
Yeah, I think it is important. It is important to warn families, I think, Pamela, about the CSS, because you're right. While the FAFSA is relatively painless, the CSS is a much more of a deep dive. And if your FAFSA is the questionnaire that you fill out while you're sitting in the doctor's office that asks generally about your health, the CSS profile is the physical. And so it's much more detailed. And I think that you need to know that colleges are using this information because they have very detailed models that they're trying to determine what kind of aid that they need to give to, just like you said, incentivize students to enroll, not just to apply, but after they've been admitted to enroll. And I think that's where it's important to understand that institutional aid is used as a tool to get students to enroll. Financial assistance, scholarship, grants is the most predictable way to determine whether a student will enroll at your school after you've been admitted. And so if you understand that, you can understand what kind of institutional aid programs are going to be offered. And it allows you, again, like I said, to be an educated consumer and to ask the right questions. And the questions that we have listed here on the PowerPoint, on the slides, are exactly what you want. Because I think what happens is that you want to be prepared to ask the first question, but then you need to be prepared for the follow-up one as well. So to be able to say, what percentage of students receive institutional aid? Well, every college is going to give you a number that's going to sound really great because they do give a ton of financial assistance. But then you need to ask the follow-up question and say, okay, well, what kind of aid is available for students with my profile? And are these going to be annual, or is this one time? And what does that mean? And are there scholarships available for maybe after I've finished my freshman year? And so you want to make sure that you're asking those follow-up questions, but understanding that institutional aid is used as a way to convince you to enroll. And once you know that, you can approach this in an educated way.
That's right. And, having a consultant help you navigate that is a great benefit. As we've said, 6 people at the end of this webinar, we want you to stick around, are going to be selected at random to receive a free 45-minute phone consultation with an expert who can answer very specific questions to your personal situation. So you'll go in locked and loaded and be able to really get a lot of value out of that time, as well as those 3 pieces of the GATE college system, 3 enrollments to 3 of the lucky participants today. So we're looking forward to sharing that at the end of this webinar. Institutional aid does cover the universities there. Actually, I used a picture on this slide. That's my alma mater. Isn't that a beautiful campus? That's Columbia University in New York City. So that is one entity, right? The university itself gives institutional aid. But another type of scholarship, and this is one that I think is a lot of fun and students really enjoy and can make sense, but can also be a big time drain. So you've got to really weigh and measure, as we know, right? 11th and 12th grade, very, very busy. Some students feel like they can barely find time to eat and sleep between everything else they're getting done. And so the time that it takes to generate the essays or whatever hoops they're asking you to jump through for these types of scholarships, you've got to really consider that. But that said, please write down the website you see here. So fastweb.com is a recommended resource for private scholarships. So these are different. This is free money. Again, the need-based aid, some of those loans you would have to pay back. The institutional aid, you do not have to pay back. Those are gifts. And in this case, these scholarships are also gifts. So I just want to delineate between what is free money and what is, we're going to float you a loan, but you will be paying this back. And in some cases, we hear about people in their 30s, 40s, and older still trying to pay off student debt. So we're looking for that free money. I think these are a lot of fun. What do you think of these images that I gave you guys here, Jeff? Aren't these fun?
I love these, yeah, because it's, for one, it does encourage a student to say, listen, no matter what it is that you value, it's worthwhile, because all these things that you can be involved in help make up who you are and help you embrace how unique you are and embrace your weird. But with the scholarships, even though these are funny, what you have to do is that you have to evaluate what you're going to be worth it for you, and figuring out whether, for lack of a better term, whether the juice is worth the squeeze on these, because some of them could be a time-consuming essay or application for a very small scholarship. But you want to make sure that, many small scholarships lead to a sizable chunk of money. You just have to evaluate each one. But I love looking at these because it embraces all the different ways that students can get involved and recognize that there's students out there who are part of the Michigan Llama Association or who are part of the National Marbles Tournament, which I didn't realize is celebrating 93 years. So So I think you wanna evaluate, because you're right, they can be time consuming, but it is fun to find other like-minded students out there interested in the American Sheep Industry Association, and deciding whether or not it's worth it to apply for those.
Yes, exactly. So that's another type of our second category. We're calling that institutional aid, but in this case, the institution would be a private corporation offering a scholarship. And in fact, GATE is going to be offering a scholarship next school year that we're looking forward to announcing, and we'll talk about that, a little bit later in the year. In the meantime, let's go to our third type. This is our final category, and this is really where the money is. Let me tell you right now, this is what I believe as a parent and as a veteran in these trenches for all these years, is where parents and teens want to really focus some effort. Merit aid usually recurs all 4 years that a student is in school. So whatever that number is, you multiply it, and that's a beautiful thing. So, when you think about that, the merit aid is connected to exactly what we say to our sons and daughters the whole time they're growing up. Honey, how's the report card looking? Did you get good grades? The grades are not just there to make us feel good or for us to say good job and here's a quarter for every A. Those grades actually translate along with the rest of the transcript, along with the SAT or ACT exam scores. The things that we're going to be talking about in the rest of this webinar, there's more detail, but this is the broad strokes. Those things combined equal, in many cases, tens of thousands of dollars in merit aid. We have had students go on a full ride to major universities, pre-med, pre-law. We have had students go with, tens of thousands, 40,000 is not uncommon, 10,000 a year for 4 years. So when you think about that and you say, well, gosh, SAT preparation, I might have to spend, a few $100s on that. If you're going to spend a few $100s to get something that is going to give your student tens of thousands back, I dare say that is a bet that we would all take every day of the week. So talk to us a little bit, Jeff, about course rigor. I know that, your background on the other side of the desk when you were working, I guess, at Pepperdine University, and now on the high school side. I love that you're participating with us because you really have both perspectives. When you think about transcripts, can you talk a little bit about the Advanced Placement Program, which is that AP program, and the International Baccalaureate Program, and how that course rigor impacts the admissions?
Sure. Yeah. I think so often we are tempted to boil down a student to just a couple of different numbers, GPA and test scores. And for one, I think we feel like we do that because we feel safe and we understand what that frame of reference is. But we also need to understand that your test scores are only going to matter for a short period of time in your life. To me, though, when you're looking at GPA, if you're to ask colleges what the most important factor is in admission or even in awarding merit aid, it's your course rigor, it's your curriculum. Because what you want to think of that transcript as your academic resume. It represents a series of choices made. It represents a series of challenges accepted or challenges avoided. And you want to make sure that every 4.0 GPA is not equal. A GPA can be manufactured. And what you get when you have course rigor, whether that is taking honors courses or AP courses or IB courses, which AP is Advanced Placement, IB is International Baccalaureate, what you're doing is that you're showing an additional commitment to preparation. And preparation is really what schools are looking for because they're evaluating your ability to make an impact in their community. And it starts with an academic impact. So to me, you don't want to boil course rigor just down to the concept that you're taking all honors AP or IB courses. Think of rigor as doing anything that you do not have to do. When you take that extra year of math, that represents rigor. When you take that extra lab science class, because that's where your passion is, that represents rigor. And so you want to look at that and say, am I challenging myself? Am I incrementally pushing myself each year more than I did the year before? So that in combination with your test scores is going to be what decides things like merit aid.
Yes, and it is important to note that advocating with your own guidance counselors is absolutely appropriate on the high school level. A lot of students allow themselves just to be put onto a track, and maybe they have a challenging 8th and 9th grade year, and for some reason, somebody in a guidance department somewhere decides, well, they're not really honors material. They're not AP. Don't let somebody tell you what kind of material you are. You need to advocate. You need to go in there and say, listen, I intend to be college bound. I know that I need to aim for at least one honors course in the 9th grade level. In fact, I share this in our GATE system. I talk about the 1, 2, 3, 4 rule. And it's a loosely defined rule, but the idea is that in 9th grade, you should have at least one honors course. Don't choose a course that you hate. Choose a course that is something that you're naturally good at, that may be something that would be involved in where you'll major or minor once you get to college. By the time you're in 10th grade, 2. So 1 in 9th, 2 in 10th. Some schools don't offer AP on the 10th grade level. Does that mean that you can't take it? Well, we can talk about that a little bit later. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that, you have the responsibility. You are the captain of your ship. And you will find that guidance counselors, college counselors like Jeff and I, we are so excited when a student shows that sort of eye of the tiger. They lean in and they say, I'm hungry for this. Show me where I can get that competitive edge. So having the right courses is very, very important. And the exam scores, frankly, we're going to talk in a moment about the different ways that the actual application is being assessed. And the exam scores are right up at the top of the pile. I will say as an aside, I'm not in love with the fact that we live in a time where there is a lot of anxiety and a lot of pressure that is placed upon our students around these SAT and ACT exams. And really, one of the reasons that we created GATE was to make that a more fun, natural process that could be experienced over the course of more than just a constrained time. Hurry up. Oh my goodness, this is so much pressure right there in, second semester of 11th grade when they're already thinking about, AP exams, final exams, prom. A lot of them have jobs. They're learning to drive. Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. So we really are excited to have a solution that makes a lot of sense, that spreads that out over time and ensures points, which is really what this is about. We got to get these numbers in the right place. So there's your action items, guys. Take a look. You are going to want to find out what were last year's average GPA and SAT or ACT score that allowed students to get into that school. You can find this online. You can also, just contact admissions departments directly. Again, that would be something that the student, not the parent, would do. You do want to be looking for schools where you're falling between that 25th and 75th percentile, because that's going to determine what a target school is. If you're outside of that range, a safety school, you would be above the 75th percentile. A reach school, you would be below the 25th, right? So, you want to think about where am I on this grid, and can I confidently apply to this school, and what can I do to give myself that competitive edge? Really, you do want to start young. Any parents listening right now, if you're the parent of a 7th or 8th grader, there are things that you should know and things you should be doing as early as 7th and 8th grade, including getting Algebra 1 underway if you can. So that's already completed by the time you get to high school, if possible, especially if they're going to go toward a STEM major, and getting them started on their foreign language, which will allow them to get to the AP level by senior year. So there are things that need to happen across a long trajectory, which is why it's always nice to have, have an expert by your side taking you through that. All right, so we're going to move on. Let's talk about choosing the best fit college. And by the way, we are going to open up for Q&A, so we're excited. Be thinking about the questions that you want to ask, and we're going to be happy to address those in just a moment. So we're going to talk about the sequence in which colleges view your application. This is not commonly known information. This is not something that people talk about, but they should, because the reality is that you can only be strategic when you have information. Knowledge is power. So the knowledge that if this is not a test optional school, the first thing they're going to see is your test score. And this is a painful reality. We didn't make the world, we just live in it. So the reality is your test score is the first thing that is going to be seen if you are going to a school where the test is required. And, if you struggle with your test prep, if you have anxiety, if you just are opposed to going through that process, please do take a look at fairtest.org. You can see there a list. Many hundreds of schools have moved to test optional or test flexible, where they will allow different types of tests to take the place of those others. So perhaps a couple of subject exams, SAT subject tests, taking the place as an example. So the test scores will be the very first thing they're going to see. And from there, it goes to transcript. So Jeff, this is what you were talking about, wasn't it? This is where the transcript, the broad overview of the transcript, not just the number. Why don't we speak a little bit about that weighted and unweighted?
Yeah, so what you've got, and even if, I often hear sometimes students who don't go to my particular school, but will be concerned because they'll say, my school doesn't weight my GPA, and they're very concerned about this. But what you have to understand is that a college is looking at your transcript, and so what they're going to see is they're going to be able to tell whether or not you've challenged yourself based on what was available to you at your school. So even if your school doesn't use a weighted GPA, and I should explain just in case we have some listeners out there who don't understand the idea of a weighted GPA. A weighted GPA is taking an honors course, an AP course, or an IB course and giving it an extra weight in the GPA. So for instance, if you took an AP course, just to make it simple, and you got an A in that course, an A is typically worth 4 GPA points. If you weighted, it might be worth 5 GPA points. And so colleges will allow you to weight that. But even if they don't, they're still going to use the strength of your curriculum. And what you want is that, obviously the best case scenario is that you started strong, you continued to challenge yourself throughout high school, and you stayed strong. But they want you to be pushing yourself. And, that age-old question, Pamela, is that what's better, to take a college prep or a regular course and get an A, or take an AP course and get a B? Now, to me, I think that if you are getting a B in a course, you are in the right spot. And if you're getting a B in something and you stop taking that AP course just to be able to get an A, you've made yourself inherently less interesting, because you've sent the very clear message that the grade at the end is much more important to you than the process and the path that you're on by challenging yourself. So I think the idea is that if you find yourself asking that question, I think that's the wrong question. You have to start with the idea is that am I interested in the class? Do I want to push myself in this class? And then if you're getting that A or that B in that class, you're in the right spot. If you're getting a C in your honors class, then it's probably time maybe to take a step back and think about whether you're in the right spot. As well with the transcript, schools are going to be able to look for trends, right? So let's say that you've had most schools, when they're looking at your transcript, if you had a down semester, let's say the spring of 10th grade was a tough year, but that's the only hard semester, then expect for a college to look for something else in your application to explain what happened during that semester. Because what they want to know is that is this a trend, or is this just an aberration? Is this just a blip on your transcript? And so you want to make sure that you talk about that. And then they also are going to look for themes, the idea of congruence of a parent's strengths and weaknesses within your intended major. So oftentimes, high school students will talk about what it is that they want to do, or what they want to study, or what they'd like to be, but you don't see any kind of connection between the coursework that you're choosing, or even the activities that you decide to be involved in. So that common narrative is going to be very important. And you can see all of those things in a transcript. So pay very close attention, and be careful not to just simplify that down to one number, just down to your GPA. Be very careful about saying, even when you're describing myself, I'm a 27 and a 3.7, because you are so much more than that, and that can be seen in your transcript.
Absolutely. And the essays are another big piece of this. You can see here in the sequence that essays is the fourth thing that they would see. And the essays are where, remember that, like when you think about the Common App, you'll have your primary 650-word essay that you'll be writing, but you will also have a lot of supplemental essays in most cases. And those essays give you an opportunity to answer questions that they didn't even know to ask. So if you need to explain or to put a frame around the fact that your family moved or a parent was, diagnosed with an illness, or who knows what happened that you went through, as long as it's honest and you're communicating from a place of transparency, showing that you have resilience, but that you, as a human being, went through an experience and how you worked through that, and what are the specific strategies that you employed to bring yourself back on track, which presumably you were able to do. So I think that, one thing that I really feel great about, in what we've created with GATE, it is a comprehensive thing that does address this. So I look at number 2, transcript is the G of GATE. So we, have trainings there that help students strengthen their skill sets on their GPA. So their mnemonic strategies, their note-taking strategies, things that aren't taught as a subject per se, but that are going to really help strengthen the GPA. So GATE is grades, applications, testing, essays. Well, the T is the first thing they see. There's your testing. Essays is the fourth thing. You can see that all of the components are a part of that acronym and a part of what we've created here that we know is going to be really, really useful. Teacher recommendations, extracurricular activities. I think that the difficult thing to note here, everyone, is that, your student can be an awesome, highly recommended student who wrote beautiful essays. They can be an Eagle Scout who has helped to solve a major problem in your community. And the truth is, those pieces of information are so far down this list that without the academic mindset, in order to secure the merit aid that we've talked about, it's still going to be a struggle to get access to some of these more competitive schools. So keep that in mind. And, I have to say, up until now, families have had to pay thousands of dollars and waste so much time struggling to navigate the maze of college admission. So every wrong decision costs not only thousands of dollars in potential aid, but also a reduced likelihood of a student even getting into the best possible college. And I just know that the right fit school is within reach when students have the right expert support. That's really what we've done here at the GATE team. We've created this collaboratively. 26 members of my team have worked for 3 years to create this content so that you don't have to run around confused. And we're so excited to be able to say that our students have gained admission to an average of 9 colleges for every 11 applications they have submitted after working with that curriculum. Our average SAT score increase is 170 to 270 points, 4 to 7 points on an ACT. What that means is your student can now confidently apply for a higher tier of college and qualify for free tuition, thanks to that merit aid that we were discussing earlier. So let's take a look and see how GATE has already helped some of those families.
Freshman, sophomore, and a little bit junior in high school, you're thinking, oh gosh, how does getting into college work?
From a parent standpoint, one of the most daunting prospects of the college education is paying for the college education.
What I've seen in my private practice, especially among college-bound teens, is a lot of confusion, anxiety, and pressure.
Introducing GATE College System, expert college admissions help, made affordable and personalized for you. GATE College System was developed by founder and CEO Pamela Donnelly.
GATE covers all your college prep needs. My team of professional educators and I hold your hand from confusion to solution in a step-by-step approach to your best fit college.
GATE prepares you for the SAT and ACT. It also helps you ace the admissions process and maximizes college acceptance letters as well as that all-important merit aid.
To be able to share with you what GATE is able to offer. Hey, Daniel, you want to tell them about it?
I'd love to, Pamela. There's so much to talk about when it comes to GATE. GATE has patent-pending technology such as GATE to test prep and etymology training that leads students through a 7-step process that averages 170 to 270 points per SAT and 4 to 7 points per ACT increase. GATE also has proprietary content such as Gate to College to help find and select best fit colleges. GATE's proprietary essays training allows students to work with English teachers to hone multiple drafts for the Common App and more, while accessing the GATE team's more than 250 combined years of professional experience in insider information. And finally, GATE is comprehensive and holistic, covering foundational topics of grades, applications, testing, essays, and even how to pay for college. Students using the system have an average gain of 170 to 270 points per SAT and 4 to 7 points per ACT and $40,000 in merit aid. You pay so much more to get everything that the GATE system offers. Let's start with college counseling alone. If you were to engage a private college counselor, you'd be paying $11,000 to $22,000 or more, or an SAT, ACT test prep course could run you well north of $1,000. Financial advice could run you $3,000, $5,000, or even more. And of course, GPA and essay trainings could cost you well north of $500. And these are just ballpark estimates. So the special price we're offering today, $29 per month over 12 months, you're getting absolutely the best deal that you possibly could. And this is going to be of huge benefit to you and your student. Applying to college and getting ready to go to college is an anxiety-producing process. There's a lot of confusion involved in all of this. And GATE really helps to remove that. So basically, for the price of a single college test prep book, you'll have access to everything that GATE offers. It's an incredible value. I believe we are moving on to Q&A. Is that correct, Pamela?
Yeah, we're ready for some questions and answers. I see you've got a whole bunch of them piling up there. So why don't you shoot? And I think we've got about 15 minutes. Hopefully we can get 5 or 6 questions in. Okay. And Jeff and I are here to answer.
They're coming in fast and furious here. So the first question comes from Sandra. And the question is, my daughter has minimal opportunities to take honors or AP courses in the fall at her high school. How can we help her? How can we help increase her grade point average?
Well, you know, G in GATE will address some of that, but I'll tell you a little secret that a lot of people don't know. There is something called a dual transcript submission. And what that means is without you having to move your student from a school where they presumably have friends, you are entitled to submit an application that has transcripts from other schools. A very popular option is online AP coursework. You know, my team here in the Los Angeles area helps to oversee that for many, many students. And it gives them a great, I mean, I've had students end up with a 4.8 weighted GPA. And a lot of that was because they were doing supplemental work online. So again, your high school may say, we don't allow 10th graders to do AP, or we don't think your student should do honors. That doesn't mean your student can't do it. It just means that you go outside of the school, you still have them complete that work, you show that beautiful, solid performance, and that transcript gets submitted to the university alongside. They will average that together into that GPA as they consider your student's application.
Pamela, another really quick thing to consider too, that if you happen to be at a school, even if it's a school that doesn't offer honors and AP classes for whatever reason, and it may be that that your school doesn't have the financial support to do it, or it may be that's a choice they've made. What you want to do is that you want to make sure that in the interest of being your own best self-advocate, is that you want to make sure that the profile your school has, and every high school has a profile, mentions that very clearly, because I think you'll also find that while there are some things that you can do to help yourself, you're not going to be penalized for opportunities that you did not have. And so you want to make it very clear that even though that this wasn't your choice, but this is the school that you attend, and you weren't able to do some of these other things is important as well.
I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely. So second question, let's see where else we are inspiring ideas in the minds of these parents.
Okay, absolutely. Nicole asks, what's a good ACT or SAT score?
Perfect is good, but that's hard to get. So, you know, national average ACT is about a 21. National average SAT is usually right around 1120. It varies from, you know, session to session. I will say that most competitive schools, you're looking for at least a 27 to 29 on that ACT, and over 1,300 when you can on the SAT. So that means that you've got, a 6-point gap or so that you're trying to fill if it's an ACT student. Not all students should be doing the ACT. A lot of students do better on the SAT. We do have a free mobile app that folks can download if they decide they want to do that and take a little diagnostic exam. Gate to the SAT/ACT is available right now on Android and iOS. And it's a lot of fun for your student to just go in and get that diagnosis. But knowing what a good score is, it's not about creating the anxiety in the student. The real question is, how can we make sure that we're giving individual support that helps them improve their comprehension? We don't just want them to get into college, we want them to thrive once they're there. And really, that's why the T section of GATE is individuated. So every student gets a unique response from what we've created in our software so that they know what they need to work on and they have the opportunity to do so. What do you think when you were working on the other side of the desk, Jeff, good scores, did you have a particular threshold that you were aware of that you had to meet?
No, we tried not to have particular thresholds because, to be completely honest, is that anytime that you're making a student aware of some kind of threshold that you're working with, then you run the risk of discouraging them from applying. And colleges don't want to do anything to discourage you from applying. It's the lifeblood of the university. So to me, what you want to do when you're looking is that you want to take your list of schools that you're aspiring to, and you want to make sure that if you want to be highly competitive, then you want to be in the top 25% of their applicant pool. And you can find that out, but you'll never find those scores listed on any school's website. So, each class, and to answer your question, Pamela, when we would go through and look at applications and test scores, each class would develop a little bit differently. And so it was always a moving target in terms of what a good score was. So to me, I encourage students and families to look at that middle 50% to see if you're going to be competitive, to look at that top 25% of test scores for each school to kind of get a sense of where you stand. And that'll give you a sense of kind of where you fall in the landscape of the places that you're applying.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you're right. We don't want to discourage anyone from applying anywhere. Listen, anyone, if you have enough money, you can write applications to, every Ivy League school, even if you have a 2.0 GPA, but you're probably throwing your money away.
Probably, so, yeah.
It's about strategy once again. Okay, very, very good. Okay, so let's move on. Next question.
Next question comes from Texas Mom. And her question is, when do you, it's a great handle. When do you recommend that students start using GATE?
Oh, thank you. GATE was developed to be able to begin being implemented as early as 9th grade. That does not mean we want 9th graders thinking about test prep. But as we've said, GATE stands for grades, applications, testing, and essays. What I'm probably most proud of with what we've created here is that it is a work that is always going to be in progress. Our team is going to be in a constant state of iteration and giving new value quarterly as people are coming in and using this product. So, we want them to start in 9th grade. There are already trainings there that are absolutely perfect and appropriate and really recommended for first semester of 9th grade. By the time they get into 10th and 11th, we're taking them through the applications trainings. There is a database where they're sorting and sifting through 524 colleges that we recommend that they consider with a fun interactive database tool there. And, the test prep starts usually right around the beginning of 11th grade. And the essays happen at the beginning of 12th grade. Listen, if you've got a senior, by the time you get to, listen, the fat lady doesn't sing until midnight on New Year's Eve in their senior year, right? So once you get there, the applications are done, regular decision is sent. There's really not much more that GATE can offer, but I would say anywhere from 9th grade all the way through that first semester of senior year.
Great. And we're moving on to another question from Amy. And Amy asks, should upper middle class families bother filling out the FAFSA since they won't get much aid anyway?
Oh my goodness. Amy. Yes, you must fill out the FAFSA. Everybody fill out the FAFSA. You would be amazed at how much money some of the families that I have worked with over my 20 years in this industry have coming in every single year and they still qualify for aid. But if you don't ask, you don't get. Everybody should be filling out that FAFSA.
Completely agree, Pamela. I don't have anything to add to that. I completely agree.
Okay, great. We move on to a question from Beth, who asks, I'm confused about the difference between weighted and unweighted GPA. Could you please review that?
Yeah, we were talking about that before, Beth, and really what this comes down to is a strategy where you want your student to take a reasonable number of honors or advanced placement or international baccalaureate classes to demonstrate what we were calling rigor. And it doesn't mean that more is always better. I love what Jeff was saying. This is about being able to weave a narrative thread throughout the application. So the way the student describes who they are in their essays to the school needs to be in harmony and in a conversation, if you will, with what are the courses that were taken, how do those grades present themselves, and what is the likelihood. Listen, if a student has C's or D's, heaven forbid, in chemistry and math courses, they probably should not be a doctor, right? We don't want our doctors to struggle but they may be a brilliant creative writer and they should head directly into a liberal arts school and begin writing novels so that we can all enjoy them. So there's no right or wrong in terms of which courses, except as really is relevant to that student and who they are. I definitely believe that even schools that are saying that they're not looking at a weighted GPA, they are looking at rigor. So do consider that 1, 2, 3, 4 rule that I mentioned earlier. By the third year of high school in that junior year, we should see a trend of at least 3 courses, and it could be 2 honors and 1 AP. But please try to, if you're going for a competitive school, show that kind of willingness to go that extra mile.
Exactly.
Fantastic. I think we still have time for a couple more questions, don't we?
Yeah, let's take at least one more. Yeah.
Okay. This question comes from David, and David asks, what types of colleges would my son likely receive more merit aid from, a public or a private university?
Oh my gosh, private. Listen, here's where we got to talk about sticker price. So many parents make the mistake of saying, okay, honey, we have financial challenges, and frankly, who doesn't? It's a very typical thing in this country that parents are overwhelmed by that. And they look and they say, oh, look, the state university is $15,000 or $20,000 a year less than that private university. Oh, honey, I don't want to get your hopes up. Don't apply to the private university. So here's the big mistake, the big takeaway. Private universities, if you go back and think about what we said in this webinar, institutional aid. If your student doesn't even apply and doesn't go through the process of action items we have shared in this webinar, they may not realize that they could end up paying less than the cost of a state school to go to one of the most elite private schools in the country. If that's the right fit for them, and it may not be, but if that's the right fit for them, what a shame if an uninformed parent discourages them from even trying on the basis of something as frankly unimportant as money. Money at the end of the day is not what anybody thinks about or cares about. When we all get to the end of our lives, we think about our kids. We think about the contributions we've made in this world. As a mom, I want my students to have the best opportunities to create a meaningful life. And college is a vehicle to help that happen. And I just know that other parents feel that same way. So let's not allow money to be the distraction. Money is just energy that we can put toward helping our kids. And that is really what I think everything should boil down to. Let's help our kids. Let's get them where they're going. And let's try to do it in as painless and inexpensive a way as we possibly can.
I think it's important. I think it's really important, too, to make sure that you're looking and understanding that private schools are typically have the largest endowments, and endowments are going to be directly linked to how much aid is given. So you can use that when you're, as a pragmatic way as a predictor of what kind of aid you're going to receive.
And that's really true. And it brings to mind, we didn't really talk in this webinar about early decision or early action. We didn't talk about score choice or super score for the testing. There are so many things that parents need to know, that teens need to know, that they may not know. So it's going to be really important for everyone to join us over at gatecollegesystem.com and just enter your best email address there. We just give away so much free content, and we're so happy to make sure that you have, you know, real-time information about the moving goalposts in this college admissions game, so to speak. And yeah, it's a really important thing for parents to have as much, you know, clarity around this as possible. We're delighted that you were able to participate with us today. You know, it's so much fun to know that parents, if you take a look at that image at the bottom right-hand corner, parents are going to have dashboard access. You're going to see how your student is progressing through GATE. So I think that's something important to mention here before we sign off.